have that, strategic advantage, so it was really difficult to know in these later, round 7, 8, 9 portion of Swiss to say, like, information to me, that's always what I find fascinating in VGC, is how you play around revealing information that either helps you or helps your opponent. So if you still have a tech that you really haven't brought in the last couple of rounds, or in the first 6 rounds, like, now might be the time to break it out.
Yeah, and one other thing I was thinking about for Norah is, like, Regieleki can be really valuable thanks to Electro Web pressure. What you do have to worry about, though, is if it's Defiant Thunderous on the other end, because if you Electro Web into like an Assault Vest Defiant Thunderous, that can be an absolute nightmare. So speed's going to be the name of the game here, and as we were talking about Regieleki, there's the Eleki to start, as well as the Whimsicott from Cedric's end. So, Whimsicott here can pressure with an immediate Tailwind, and Regieleki can pressure with an Electro Web. One other very obscure option that could be interesting here, I don't know if Norah has it, but is to actually go for a Trick Room with your Calyrex, expecting Tailwind from the opposing end. Often on these Calyrex teams, they'll actually run Trick Room to normally shut down opposing Trick Room teams, and so that's another option that could be available here, and that would be really interesting.
I love seeing, a lot of offensive pressure of fast Pokemon on the field, a lot of action on turn 1. Like, we're not sitting here to double protect and gauge the field. We're going to be going ready from the jump here in game 1 with the Whimsicott, whatever tricks it has up its sleeve on Cedric's end, or for Norah, whatever her Regieleki can go for in this matchup. I really like when we see really fast and offensive turn 1s. The Calyrex Shadow Rider, obviously the same Pokemon, so there is a potential for a speed tie. We don't know if it's naturally faster or it just had good success for Cedric there. Doesn't claim a knockout on either spot because of the focus hash there for Norah's Calyrex. The Electro Web will lower the speed on both of Cedric's Pokemon, so that will somewhat negate the Tailwind that the ones got set up. And it is a eject button, so because of the Tailwind, it went faster thanks to the Prankster, but now it's off the field. You can get an actual more reliable damage output Pokemon on the field instead of Whimsicott to abuse the Tailwind while you have it.
Yeah, the thing is, you don't want to switch in Zacian here, which is why Cedric opts for the Incineroar instead, because if Zacian comes out, he just probably takes a huge Astral Barrage right now. So I think at the end of the day, it's a decent trade-off for your Cedric, right? You are successful in getting Tailwind up, and yeah, Norah's going to get some good damage off here. It's going to knock out the Calyrex, but now this enables Cedric to get a free switch in. However, this then goes to the question I was talking about earlier. It's like, who do you Dynamax, right? If you didn't bring Thundurus into the matchup, Calyrex is now gone. So then if Zacian is indeed your final Pokemon, like, you have to max Incineroar or Whimsicott, right? So then it's like, does Incineroar have an offensive move pool here? Is it meant to be more offensive, or does Cedric just not really have a great max option? I think that's one issue that often Calyrex Zacian teams run into specifically, and you can see that Norah here, right, has the Blastoise and the Eleki, so those are both viable max options. And so now you've got the Tailwind up, you have Fake Out pressure, so you can just click Fake Out into the Regieleki. Zacian can pressure Calyrex with the KO, and so from Norah's end, do you want to just give up a double KO? One play you could make is like protect Calyrex, or and then switch the other out into Incineroar. And then the other question I have is, who does Norah want to Dynamax, right? Do you have the Blastoise in the back? Because if so, that looks like an excellent max option right now.
And this is the 3rd turn of Tailwind, so Cedric is going to have one more turn of Tailwind after this one. And after that, Norah will be able to try to take advantage of the speed control when it goes back to neutral. Substitute, though, from Zacian is revealed. It's not on every Zacian, but it is a common move, so it is nice to learn that information that it is holding a substitute. It will be the spread attack Astral Barrage, connecting on both, and then getting rid of the substitute. So the Regieleki was knocked out, but Incineroar, it is a dark type, right? So you don't really have to, worry about the the Shadow Rider too much, and Blastoise will switch in here at full HP, ready to go and ready to maybe get some cannonades rolling.
Yeah, Blastoise looks amazing in this position, and the part of the issue for Cedric is, despite getting the Tailwind up early, just looks so much damage from Astral Barrage, right? And so it's like, Whimsicott set up the Tailwind, but then where's the damage coming from? Incineroar in this game actually didn't contribute very much. I think if Cedric had actually brought Thundurus over the Incineroar, you could have a late game position where it's just Thundurus and Zacian next to each other. One of them will have taken an Astral Barrage from earlier, but that's not too bad, right? And at this point, Cedric has to basically max Incineroar. I mean, I guess you could max Whimsicott, but like you mentioned, Blastoise in a great position to just max and go for the candidate immediately. And Zacian trying to get a sub up there, maybe trying to get an advantage if Calyrex protects. Calyrex just goes for the Astral Barrage. Norah saying, I don't really care if you knock me out here, it's fine. And very good decision to bring Blastoise in the back here, because it is absolutely amazing into Cedric's team if you don't bring the Thundurus.
And it was smart to have it in the back instead of leaning it in case Cedric brought Thunderous.
Absolutely.
In this moment, we see Thunderous didn't bring it, or Cedric didn't bring Thunderous, but of course that could be a potential adjustment for Game 2. So G-Max Blastoise is out on the field and looking to be a menace. Zacian will protect, though. Doesn't want to take too much damage from a potential Cannonade. Calyrex on Norah's end will also protect its 1 HP remaining. And there is the Darkest Lariat reveal into that slot. So now Norah knows going into the rest of the set that the potential Darkest Lariat will be able to do a lot of damage to Calyrex. G-Max Cannonade goes into protect, so not doing too much, but more importantly, will set up that residual damage thanks to the Water Vortex at the end of the turn for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, and I like the decision to not target Incineroar there. Normally it's tempting to just go for a knockout onto, take a super effective hit, but what in the world is Incineroar going to do offensively against Blastoise here, right? Zacian is the clear offensive threat here. So this next turn you can consider like Behemoth Blade onto Blastoise. Like I think for Cedric's end, it's really hard to actually stall out the Dynamax right now, and you have to consider that Norah still actually has another Pokemon in the back. The substitute actually set Cedric back a decent amount because it didn't get any value. Norah going for that great Astral Barrage play that turn, and so this is tough, right? Because in the end, like, Tailwind's great, but you need the damage output as well, and the damage output just wasn't really there. One thing that was crucial, of course, in the beginning of the game was the Regieleki surviving the Astral Barrage as well, because if Alecki goes down there, then it's actually a completely different game, but, Alecki does manage to hang on. So Zacian just staying in, Behemoth Blade, still no Dynamax, and this is one of the things that's big in Series 12, right? Like, can you actually get value of your Dynamax, and it's just so late for Cedric right now.
Behemoth Blade will take care of that remaining 1 HP that Calyrex had on Norah's end. And the parting shot from Incineroar will lower Blastoise's attack, but more importantly, its special attack by 1 stage, as Cedric is essentially forced to switch into the Whimsicott here. So Cedric does have, once something gets knocked out, either the Whimsicott or the Zacian, it will be able to bring Incineroar back in and then give him Intimidate and access to Fake Out as well. But another G-Max Cannonade from Blastoise, bringing Zacian down to the red, and thanks to the residual damage at the end of the turn, that will be enough to knock it out. So really a tough battle in Game 1 for Cedric, as you got the Tailwind to work successfully, but you really had no options to stop Norah's Blastoise from running through the field.
The Cannonade, by the way, was like, it was basically exactly enough given the Zacian's stat there. Right, like the problem in this game for Cedric was that Norah just had a much stronger Dynamax option. In fact, like Blastoise, it feels like it almost just single-handedly won the game, whereas for Cedric, there was no Dynamax. Another thing to call out here is when Calyrex is out on the field, it cancels out berries, and so sometimes it cancels out Incineroar's healing berries, but in this case, even with Calyrex not on the field, there's no berry reveal from Incineroar, right? So at this point, you're left with 2 very passive Pokemon, and that's the problem with bringing both Whimsicott and Incineroar out. Neither really deal very much damage. Now, from Cedric's angle, it makes sense to bring the Incineroar because you're playing against Zacian and Calyrex, right?
Yes.
And Rillaboom. Like, of course, Incineroar should be really good against all of those, but the thing is that it's not exactly a particularly strong Dynamax option, and it's definitely not strong into Blastoise. And so I think even though it felt like Norah was at a slight disadvantage in that matchup because she does not have the Tailwind, the way she maneuvered that game was really fantastic, recognizing, hey, okay, I can just trade turn 1. I don't care if you get Tailwind up because I am still able to get a lot more damage onto your side of the field. So I think the adjustment that Cedric would really need to make in this next game is bring Thunderous, right? Thunderous, especially as a Dynamax option, very strong into Blastoise, especially because you can cover for Wakandberry with your own Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as we were looking at the 4 that Cedric brought in Game 1, and you were talking about how they were lacking a lot of good Dynamax options, it seems like how this team is constructed, that Thunderous really is the best option as a Dynamaxer on this group. And we don't know how the other rounds of Swiss has went, but being 6-0 at this point, you would think that Thunderous has been integral to the success of this run here in Indianapolis. So maybe make an adjustment because Thunderous is your best answer against Blastoise.
Yeah, I guess the tricky thing is, like, how do you deal with the Regieleki plus Calyrex Shadow Rider duo, especially now knowing Regieleki can take that turn 1 Astral Barrage from Calyrex from Cedric's end, right? right? So you could lead Tailwind. In fact, like Whimsicott Calyrex felt strong, but the problem is Calyrex can't actually get a one-hit knockout onto either immediately, and that is the big problem. So if you have Protect on Calyrex, what you can do is actually lead Whimsicott Calyrex and turn 1 Tailwind Protect, let the let the Whimsicott get ejected out, then switch in Thundurus or Zacian, and then you have a healthy Calyrex rather than it just getting KO'd immediately. I think basically the two things Cedric needs to do in this game is one, figure out a better Dynamax. I feel like Thundurus is by far the best one here, and then also maybe conserve the HP on Calyrex a little bit more. It's just tough to feel comfortable bringing Incineroar, and from Norah's end, do you feel comfortable going with the same lead? Because it did look pretty scary, honestly, on turn 1. But I think, that lead just matches the pressure that Cedric has, right? If you lead something that's passive, like Rillaboom Blastoise or Instant Blastoise, like that gets punished really hard by Thundurus, and so it makes sense for Norah to just go with the same thing. You could lead Blastoise, but then you're at risk of Cedric just leading Thundurus, like you mentioned, and putting on pressure.
The interesting thing with the eject button on Whimsicott is not only while you're in team preview deciding what to bring turn 1, it actually helps you decide what to do turn 2 as well. If your plan is to Tailwind eject button and then bring something more important on turn 2, so it can really help you kind of map together multiple turns in a row at the beginning of the map, or in the beginning of the match, instead of just going turn by turn.
Yeah, Norah's going to switch it up this time, actually, going with the other two Pokemon. The two Pokemon that were in the back last time with Zacian and Blastoise instead. So one of the interesting questions I have here is the item on, or the moveset on Blastoise. Like, do you have Fake Out? Because if so, you could actually just Fake Out to eject the Whimsicott immediately. That being said, Cedric, as of right now, doesn't necessarily need Tailwind. Norah might actually just feel comfortable going for a Max and going for a Cannonade. However, the other question is, do you know the Whimsicott's moveset? You've seen the eject button, so you've got to be worried about Switcheroo. Something like a Switcheroo into an Astral Barrage on a Blastoise immediately is a disaster, and it looks like Norah recognizes that. And Incineroar, really the perfect Pokemon to switch into right now, and a nice adjustment after that first game. Immune to a potential Switcheroo, and also can just take Astral Barrage decently well right now.
Right, as a Dark type, Incineroar is immune
to
Prankster attacks, and there's the Switcheroo reveal. So Norah is not falling for the Battle Stadium special of having the Dynamax and eject button and switching at your Dynamax. She was not, or she was prepared for that potential play on turn 1. Now Zacian will Behemoth Blade onto Cedric and onto the Whimsicott there. And we know it's not Focus Sash because it was trying to get rid of that eject button there. So Whimsicott goes down in this game, and a pretty rough turn for Cedric there, as you didn't get Tailwind value and your potential, or your attempt at Switcheroo was failed thanks to the Dark type.
The thing is, if you brought Thundurus out here, you're actually in a pretty decent spot, even though you traded a Pokemon, because then you can Dynamax Thundurus, and Incineroar can't fake out either Pokemon, so then you can potentially just go for, say, Max Airstream and Astral Barrage. Even if Zacian survives, that's okay. Zacian took the first one pretty well. There is the Thundurus. I think that's exactly the adjustment that Cedric needed to make. So now the idea is, okay, I took a lot of damage, sure, but now I can just Max Airstream Astral Barrage, Max Lightning Astral Barrage. There's a lot of sheer power right now, and so, the first question I have is, does the Max Airstream Astral Barrage combo actually KO the Incineroar? Norah, Zacian, of course, will be able to get an attack off here, and I think for Norah, you kind of have to sacrifice the Incineroar, because if this is Defiant Thundurus, which normally is on these compositions, you switch it out, you bring it back in, you're just going to give it a boost, right? So you kind of just sacrifice it. But this is one of those scenarios where even though Cedric lost a Pokemon, I actually think he's in a fantastic position right now, because Norah's Incineroar actually does not contribute very much.
No switches from either end, so Cedric deciding to Dynamax the Thundurus here. A nice adjustment, as we were talking about.
You could Max Instant here. That's actually a potential solution. Let's see.
If you're not gonna switch it out, you say, I don't want you to ever get an attack boost from your Defiant. So Norah does not opt for that, although it would have been very nice to see. The Astral Barrage, though, does not KO Zacian. Zacian hanging on with 3 HP, so this Behemoth Blade is really going to hurt Cedric. It goes into the Calyrex slot, so it is bringing it down to 1 HP thanks to its Focus Sash there. So a very clutch survival on Norah's end with the Zacian. And Max Airstream from Thundurus will target the Incineroar, and that is also not enough to knock it out. That brings it down into the red. You have the speed boost there, but now Norah has 2 very low health Pokemon.
2 very low health, but the thing is, actually, because you don't get the knockout, yeah, it's just Flare Blitz. That's an absolutely huge survival there. Like, I think Cedric's path to victory, it's still not over, but it's actually a huge survival there, because if you get the KO, then suddenly you also get a special attack boost, and then you just go Astral Barrage.
And the speed boost, and you just start steamrolling.
Exactly,
yep.
Especially with Blastoise Calyrex in the back. So I think, yeah, that was what we were asking, right? Can Incineroar actually hang on from the combo? The answer is actually yes, which is an absolutely huge deal. That being said, both Pokemon are really low HP right now. Thunderous can get a guaranteed speed boost here if you just Airstream onto Zacian, and then you could go for a, do you expect the Incineroar to switch out, right? I think right now maybe you just sacrifice both Pokemon, then the end game for Norah is Blastoise plus Calyrex, which is still pretty scary. The thing is, you could actually max either. It really, probably would be Blastoise max. I'm curious also on the item. And then the other thing to consider is Cedric, if you have max Knuckle, you can boost your attack to have a stronger attack into the Blastoise specifically, even after Dynamax.
Zacian will protect on this turn. Thunderous with the max Airstream into Norah's low HP. Zacian there will be able to knock it out. So now it is all up to the Incineroar here on Norah's end because it's so low health. If you go for a Flare Blitz, you're going to knock yourself out due to potential recoil damage, or you try to Parting Shot, something like that. But it's actually not even going to get the chance because of Zacian's Behemoth Blade from Cedric. Will knock it out. So now we're down 2-2 here in this matchup. Norah, she has revealed Blastoise. We are assuming that Calyrex Shadow Rider is the fourth, but we haven't seen it yet. And then Cedric, who's down to his last two of Thunderous with one more turn of Dynamax and Zacian.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting endgame because Norah does have the Dynamax advantage at the moment. It's a little bit scary though, right? Because it's a Thunderous against Blastoise, so one of the questions I have is the item on Blastoise. One play you could also theoretically make is like Max Guard Protect, but then you risk losing your Focus Sash on Calyrex immediately. So from Cedric's end, you could go for a double up onto Calyrex here, Max Airstream, and like Behemoth Blade it. One of the questions I have is, like, can you knock out Blastoise efficiently, right? Behemoth Blade is an incredibly powerful attack, and then Zacian can definitely take a G-Max Cannonade as well, and some chip damage from Cannonade. So, yeah, this is a really, really critical turn. I don't think you really ever want to Dynamax Calyrex, because if you do, Max Phantasm would actually activate Defiant on Thunderous, and so that's really scary. So it feels like Blastoise has to be the max option here. Then the question is, can Blastoise take something like a Max Lightning into a Behemoth Blade? Thunderous could actually Max Knuckle to increase Zacian's attack as well, and allow it to get a stronger Behemoth Blade off in subsequent turns as well.
And back in the day, we'd see Blastoise with Wakan Berry to kind of help in these matchups against strong electric types. Obviously, there are other items that it can have access to and use effectively, but if it is Wakan Berry, that would help take some of the damage on this last turn of Dynamax from a Max Lightning here. So G-Max Blastoise will hit the field yet again.
There it is.
And there's the Max Lightning. Do we see? That's a gigantic berry. I don't know how Blastoise is able to eat a berry that size, but it's going to help Blastoise take a lot less damage from this Max Lightning on this turn. So that's a nice reveal, and I'm sure that Wakan Berry has been crucial for Norah in her run throughout Swiss so far today. And now the Zacian is faster than the Calyrex Shadow Rider because of the Max Airstream the first turn.
Is this enough though? Not even
it is
close.
a resisted attack, so it's kind of evens out a double damage, but resisted, and is not enough. Astral Barrage from Calyrex brings down both of the Pokemon, hits both, and then G-Max Cannonade from Blastoise into Zacian is enough for a knockout there. So you claim one KO, and then now every turn you're going to be doing the residual G-Max damage to Thunderous as well.
Yeah, I think this game, if the Incineroar had just fainted, it feels like Cedric would have been able to snowball it out of control. But that very clutch survival and now puts Norah in a very commanding position. I think it's going to be pretty difficult, if not impossible, for Thunderous to win here, because you can only knock out one Pokemon right now, and then whatever other Pokemon gets an attack off, whether it be an Astral Barrage or a Cannonade, plus the Cannonade chip should actually just be enough for a knockout. So Cedric recognizes that. And Norah Bowman is going to go 7-0. Absolutely amazing performance there in what looked like a pretty tricky matchup because of like the Whimsicott and the potential Tailwind pressure, but the main